All right, now let's bring in Robert Barnes, trial lawyer Robert Barnes. Robert, thank you so much for coming on the program. Very somber day here. A lot of reaction to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You did Charlie's podcast, I believe. Tell us what it was like working with Charlie. How was he as someone to work with, and what were your general impressions of the man, just having dealt with him?
Yeah, so I followed Charlie throughout his entire career. A young guy, started out as sort of a normie conservative, sort of a Ben Shapiro kind of personality. Started Turning Point when I think he was 18 years old, out of his garage. And he built it into one of the most extraordinary young people political movements in the history of the country. And in watching him do it, was fascinated by his willingness, his eagerness to achieve extraordinary things, his fearlessness in that advocacy, took on reaching out to young people especially. The other thing that always struck me about Charlie, and I got the chance to be friends with him, a very nice guy, very open guy. Not like a lot of the diva personalities you might get with success. He had none of that. He was very accessible. He would do favors for friends, at a drop of a hat. He would record videos for people. He'd do it for free all the time. He would do things out of his own on his own time and his own dime all the time. Very open-minded, very curious guy, willing to change his opinion on topics, on subjects, on policies. A true throwback to old school American dialogue and debate in the best of the Enlightenment tradition. He was truly, as some people have said, he was the best America had to offer. And his assassination is a tragedy, not only for obviously his young daughters and young son, and his young wife, but for America itself, because it looks like political violence is getting a permission slip from the left. And as long as that happens, we're going to face a lot more of it. And we're going to look like the 60s all over again.
Well, that's the thing I'm really worried about, Robert, is this, threat that we go back to the 60s, when you had Bobby, Martin, JFK. You had, in the 70s, you had an incredible wave of weather underground bombings, all sorts of bombings by Puerto Rican nationalists, various different groups. We forget all about that. Now, that was in living memory of an awful lot of people. People, older than, their 50s or 60s, they would remember all this. We seem to have forgotten about this. How concerned are you that America is going to descend back into this? Because while I know there's been political violence on both sides of politics and victims on both sides, only one side seems to get on social media and cheer when it happens.
No doubt about it. And what we've seen is, if you study American history, that usually the people committing the violence are these psychopaths and sociopaths getting to act out their sick fantasies, their sick, violent fantasies. But the violence tends to take to a whole new, usually those fantasies stay in their head until and unless somebody with power gives them a political permission slip. What Miranda Devine was talking about, a cultural cachet for doing the violence. That's when you see a surge of violence. We saw it around the time of the Civil War. So in America, again, during a lot of the anarchist-driven violence of the late 19th, early 20th century. Then, of course, saw it in Europe in the 1920s and 1930s between communists and fascists. We saw it again in the United States in the 1960s. I studied in detail when I was in school the history of the Ku Klux Klan. And what you find is that organization's violence surged and waned with political permission slips by the local and broader political community. That when the community condemned them, that violence disappeared and faded in the background, became rare and exceptional. When, by contrast, like after the Civil War, like again in the 1920s, like again in the 1950s and 1960s, when they got a political, wink and a nod from the powers that be, that's when the violence exploded. And we've been seeing this political permission slip since Trump got on the scene.
Robert, I want to just ask you something very quickly. You talked about having studied the Ku Klux Klan before. Earlier in the program, I said this would be a great opportunity for the FBI and the Justice Department to do to Antifa what LBJ did through Hoover to the Klan. Is this something that you would think would be a good idea now for the FBI, for the Department of Justice, to break these networks of these hard-left, radical, violent groups?
Absolutely. I've been calling for it for a while because it was clear the riots in 2016 were not all organic. That unlike Charlie Kirk's organization, many of these protests, many of these violent movements have shown the signs of sponsorship, of patronage, of financial support. The Trump administration is getting serious about cracking down on all the funders, the supporters, the facilitators, the aiders and the abettors, the enablers of this dangerous violence. We've got to, at a minimum, stop the political permission slip, shame and all the people that do it, and go after criminally and civilly the financial networks that are encouraging this and incentivizing it. We need to crack down on this politicized violence now, and everybody who's funding it, abling it, and enabling it.
Robert Barnes, thank you so much for that perspective. I'm really glad we had you on the program this week.